It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Santa Clara heads volleyball coach, Coach Erin Lindsey. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Brandon.
Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in coaching in college volleyball?
Yeah, in fact, I didn't know. I went into advertising and marketing after graduating from the University of North Carolina. My dad was a coach. He coached volleyball and basketball when I was growing up. And so I'd been around coaching quite a bit, but didn't think it was what I was going to do for a living, really until I got into more of the corporate setting. I liked it. I was doing well, but didn't feel like I was really giving back and impacting others the way I thought I could. And I thought coaching was probably the best way to do that, just with a combination of my playing experience and my degree. I thought about teaching a little bit, but then I decided that coaching would be a little bit more fun.
What was it like going to North Carolina and playing volleyball there?
It was awesome. It was a dream. Being at a university that values its athletics programs and its athletes the way UNC does, in combination with it being such a strong academic institution, it was really the perfect fit for me. It was very far away from home and different culturally, as I came from Hawaii. But I will say it was just like the ultimate college experience. You know, Chapel Hill is a great college town. There's just huge spirit around the sports at UNC. I was lucky to be there at a time when, our basketball program has been very good in many years, but I was around the time that Vince Carter and Antoine Jameson were all, there with the basketball team, and it was just a really great college experience.
What was your playing time like at the UNC Tarheels?
Well, I came in, I was a setter in college. And so I came in and got the opportunity to play really early on for UNC. They had some turnover in their setting position. And so I was very fortunate to be able to come in and play right away. And that was really cool. As I went on in my career, I had some good competition as well with another setter named Lib Hobson. She was from down in the Tampa area. We were very close friends as well. It was a very, I think, healthy competition for position, but it was great. We were at a time with the program that it was really trying to get back up to the top of the ACC. We were, Georgia Tech at the time was really dominating the league. And I was very fortunate that by the end of, my career, we worked our way back up to the top.
What was that feeling like of getting to put on that powder Carolina blue jersey?
It's amazing. There's not another color like it. No, it's really cool. Just the history of athletics at Carolina, and knowing that you're representing a university and an institution that achieves at such a high level in all the sports. And then, like I said, also just as a larger institution of higher education was really special. And it's always cool to have like all the good gear from Nike, right? They do it special for Carolina.
How is that like playing in the ACC and playing teams like NC State, Duke, and Georgia Tech?
Yeah, the ACC was a super fun conference the whole time. I would say it's a little bit stronger in volleyball now nationally than it was when I played in the late 90s, but it was still really competitive, and all of the rivalries and the spirit of the institution still very much lived in the conference. And so I remember back when we played, or when I played, we were still playing side out scoring. So it wasn't rally scoring. So matches could go on for so long. And I remember so many battles in Cameron Indoor against Duke, going to 5 sets, and it just taking 3 hours to get through a match. And those are some of the best memories. NC State was always super interesting because they always had it out for us, played their best against us. At the time, I wouldn't say they were as competitive as they are now, but they definitely always brought it against the Tar Heels, right? And so I think that those rivalries are really what made, my college experience a special one.
Of course, after your college time, what was it like going and coaching at your alma mater of UNC?
Yeah, I felt really grateful that Joe, gave me the opportunity to come back and work with him. Coaching at your alma mater, it's for most people, I think it's just really not easy, but like you got to have the same experience. And so when it comes to recruiting and letting athletes and families know why, that becomes very easy because you have a lot of personal experience to lean upon. And so I really enjoyed getting the opportunity to offer others, the great experience that I was able to have at Carolina. And so that piece of it, I think, for my first collegiate coaching job, made it a little easier to make the transition because I knew the product and the program so well. And then just being able to be back in Chapel Hill, frankly, I had both my children, when I was coaching in Chapel Hill, and we loved living in Chapel Hill. My husband's actually a Tar Heel as well. And so we just feel very connected to the university and the place.
What was that like serving as the director of operations for the Carolina Volleyball Club?
Well, camps. Camps or I worked.
The camps.
Also, I worked a little bit at Triangle Volleyball Club, which is in the area. But the camps were really challenging, but great. It's so huge. You have so many fans around the state. It is so cool to be at an institution where, even folks who didn't attend still really cheer for Carolina and want to be a part of it, right? And so we really saw that come through in camps. And we had so many athletes and so many teams wanting to come to camp. So it was a huge event, and it took a lot of work. But I always felt so inspired, especially when camps were done. But just with how many people cared about Carolina and the work we were doing.
What was that like as a player getting to play in the NCAA tournament? And did you ever go as a coach with Carolina to the NCAA tournament?
Yes, I got to do both. So my senior year, we traveled up to Michigan State to play in the NCAA tournament, won the first round, and then lost to Pepperdine, I believe, who had upset Michigan State in the second round of the NCAA tournament. That was an amazing feeling also because Carolina volleyball hadn't been to the NCAA tournament in quite a few years. And so to be able to, bring the program back into that level of competition was really exciting, especially since after that was definitely kind of a streak of domination by UNC in the ACC, and then also making far deeper runs into the NCAA tournament. As a coach, yes, we were able to go to the NCAA tournament as well. It was really fun. Like I said, it was that time when the program was making, the jump competitively from, being just at the top of the ACC to being relevant nationally. And so I was there, definitely in a time when that transition was still happening. I would say once I headed off to Dartmouth and Eve Rackham replaced me, they really started making some huge strides in, competing in the Sweet 16 and beyond.
What was that like leaving your alma mater to get your first coaching job out of your alma mater?
I was ready at the time, but it was tough. because I had only known college volleyball coaching at a place that I was so familiar with. And so I had a lot of ideas, as most assistants do in going into their first head coaching position, who they want to be and how they want to run their program, but it doesn't always work out exactly how you expect it to, right? And so I think it was an exciting time. It was a sad time a little bit to, leave Carolina, but I also knew for my career that I wanted to experience coaching at a lot of different places and a lot of different kinds of programs, because I believe that would make me the best coach possible.
What was it like going to Illinois and to become the assistant coach?
Yeah, that was an interesting decision for me because I had just been head coaching at Dartmouth for the last 5 years before that. I think I realized while I was there that my family, like New England wasn't going to be the perfect place for us. And so we wanted to start working our way kind of west. And when I was offered the opportunity to assist Kevin at Illinois, I had to look at it hard because I wasn't positive I wanted to go back to assistant coaching, but being in the Big Ten and competing at the highest level of the sport and coaching at that level, I thought was going to be really important for the future. And I had a lot of respect for Kevin. I've known him for a long time. He actually coached my sister my sister, Lindsey Berg, was on 3 Olympic teams, and Kevin was her assistant coach on her first Olympics in Athens. And so him and I had connected and met kind of through that. And so we were always talking about volleyball and thought maybe we would want to work together at some point in the future. So I was really lucky to get a call from him, and it just ended up being too good of an opportunity to pass up. So I went ahead and made that decision, to back to assistant coaching and recruiting coordination, which was, definitely a transition after head coaching for 5 years. But I really do think it allowed me to keep growing as a coach and put me in better position for where I am now.
What was that feeling like when you got that call from Dartmouth to become the head coach?
It was exciting. I was in the process of looking for head coaching positions after I had finished my master's at Carolina. So I had applied for jobs. I was making connections with my network and other head coaches that I knew to let them know that I was looking, because a lot of jobs nowadays, as you've probably heard and know, people get opportunities by, some other coach giving their name to an administrator. And so I was really lucky to, have had that happen and have folks talking about, my ability to do the job. And so I was looking, I had been on interviews for a couple other positions besides Dartmouth. And I found it interesting that I liked Dartmouth and saw the most potential in Dartmouth compared to the other institutions that I had been interviewing with. And so I was really excited to get, that offer so that I could, get my first shot at running a program.
During your time at Dartmouth, what were some of your accomplishments as head coach of running your program?
Yeah, so we brought the program, from the bottom of the league basically up into contention for the Ivy. So we were actually 2 points away my last year there at Yale, who had been dominating. Princeton and Yale pretty much dominated the Ivy while I was there. And we were really not in contention at all when I first got there. And then by the time, I headed out, we were, like I said, 2 points away from a tie for the championship. And I was honored with co-coach of the year that year as well. And I think that for me, it wasn't so much about the accomplishments, although I am really proud of, where we were able to get the team, but more about the athlete's experience and having a great athletic experience, with my program, and a program that I was going to facilitate to make sure that young women could really, benefit and value from their time working to achieve in volleyball and trying to win championships. And so I felt really proud about putting the program on track for that. And I do think that that is something that ultimately, if you're doing a good job as a coach in recruiting and putting a program like that together, it will lead to winning. And that's what we saw happening. So I'm proud of the larger building of what we were able to do at Dartmouth.
What was it like going from an Ivy League D1 school to going to Stanford, a D1 school, and being an assistant coach?
Yeah, I mean, there were some similarities, especially in academic requirements. And I would say also kind of the type of student that we were recruiting at an Ivy, right, in Dartmouth, and then Stanford. I mean, everybody calls Stanford, the Ivy of the West. And the difference in Stanford, obviously, is that they're very regularly competing for national championships in all their sports because of their, commitment to excelling in athletics at the highest level. And that was really cool. I mean, just to be a part of a program who the expectation is that you will be in the Final Four and that you will win was really cool. As a coach, I think it's a lot of pressure as both a coach and then also on our athletes. But I think that in having that expectation, it does really push folks to find their best. And we had a lot of volleyball players who came to Stanford, and knew that's what the expectation was and really liked that and wanted to, achieve and win national championships. And so I would say that there was a big difference in like level of play and competition and just straight volleyball talent. But I also think there were a lot of similarities in what our student athletes kind of go through and what they have to work through to do their best, regardless of, the level they're competing at.
How did your time at Stanford help you to where you are now at St. Clair?
It helped a lot, to be honest. I mean, just working with Kevin Hambley, both for the year at Illinois and the 2 years at Stanford, I think really focused, I would say, my philosophy as a coach and how I operate. I think that there were definitely some things I was already doing or doing on my own, but then, gained more clarity, I would say, in how I wanted to do something and why. They're having the experience to win a national championship and to take athletes to that high of a level, I think just also builds in a certain amount of credibility with your next stop, right? So when I came here to Santa Clara, our athletes were, ready to make changes and listen and to buy in, I would say pretty quickly to the changes that we were looking to make for the benefit of the program. And I think some of that comes from the credibility of coming from a place like Stanford and having the opportunity to compete and win national championships. And so I think that there are a lot of things like through the experience that really prepared me even more for this role than I had already figured out as head coach at Dartmouth. And I do feel like now I have even more of a sense of, what an Erin Lindsey program looks like.
Speaking about that, how did your time at Dartmouth being head coach help you and get over the first time head coach jitters to where you are now?
Yeah, it was huge. It was huge. I think that's very real. I don't know if all assistants know that going into head coaching but I think most head coaches will tell you that they learn a lot in their first 3 to 4 years head coaching and finding out who they are as a head coach. I think a lot of coaches know who they are and what their values are, but when you have to do it in a different seat, you're no longer the assistant who the athletes, feel really comfortable going to talk to. Now you're the one making the decision, you're making the decisions about playing time or, their role on the team. And I would say it makes it more challenging to develop those relationships with your athletes. I think it takes a lot more intentional effort to do that. And I think that piece of coaching is a really important one, especially now. And so I think finding yourself as a head coach takes time, knowing what, your own strengths and weaknesses are, what you need to look for in assistants to fill holes. All those kind of things are really hard to figure out until you're in the seat. And so I felt really grateful, to Harry Sheehy, who was the AD at Dartmouth at the time. He hired me in giving me an opportunity in a pretty, in the big picture, relatively low stakes environment, right? Like Dartmouth hadn't been winning. They were kind of at the bottom of the Ivy. There wasn't a big microscope on our program. Not a ton of people are paying attention to Ivy volleyball outside of Ivy volleyball. And so I think it gave me space and opportunity to grow as a head coach and figure all those things out. And, making those mistakes, right? We're going to make them, you're going to make mistakes. And you hope, or I hope anyway, philosophically, for my philosophy, that I'm not hurting, my student athletes or things like that through those, but they're always things we're going to learn. And I continue to, learn those things because every place is a little different as well.
What were some of the things that you took from Dartmouth during your time at the Ivy League to transfer over to your next role as head coach?
I think it's really it was a lot in the building of the culture and what worked and what maybe didn't, and what worked in making our athletes feel valued, especially in determining roles for the team, and then what pieces you need to create a championship team, right? And so even though it was at a different level at Dartmouth, I would say that putting the puzzle together is still something you have to do at every new spot, especially if you're taking over a program that is not winning. And so that was the case here at Santa Clara too. When I got here, we had only had, I think, one conference win the year before I took over the position. And so I knew it was going to be that same sort of puzzle, that same sort of building. Not only do we need to find athletes that are going to be able to help us win, but we need to, shore up the culture and figure out, what's going on that we're not able to find those W's, right? And are people having a great experience being a part of this organization and this team? And so I would say being in that similar growth space, or like the need for that building, I took a lot from what I had done at Dartmouth, what worked, what didn't work in the planning for being here at Santa Clara.
Can you talk about, of course, the culture that you've built at Santa Clara?
Yeah, our culture, and wherever I will go as a coach, I think I will try to instill a culture of empowerment. I really want to value everybody who's a part of our organization. And so we all may play different roles in what's going to lead the group to performing at a high level and then leading to wins. But for me, it's about, really making sure that everybody feels empowered to be themselves and to work to achieve for the group, right? And so that takes a lot of, I would say, trust, like building of trust. The athletes feel like the staff and each other are behind them, right? That we have their backs, that we're not going to put them in danger, right? So student athlete health and wellness is a huge part, I would say, of the foundation of what we do. Because if you don't do that, or aren't able, or it's not perceived you're doing it, even if you're trying to do it, but that's not the perception, it's really, really hard to build trust to the place where we can really push as a group to achieve the performance we need to win at the highest level. And so that comes from a lot of relationship building, I would say. It comes from a lot of commitment by the institution to, have the resources for good health and wellness, and to travel and to have support for their academics and support for their mental health and things like that, so that, we can be our best when we step out onto the court. And so I think that culture comes from like little things every day piling up to, oh, this is a place that's consistent, that functions with integrity. They mean what they say, like they do what they say. So I can trust that. And now I can go work hard and work to be my very best. And so that's really, I would say that foundation is what then leads to the culture of empowerment and frankly, just achievement and space to like go after the wins.
Who are some of the teams that you face in your conference against Santa Clara?
Yeah, so we are in the WCC, West Coast Conference. Our top teams right now are BYU in Utah, Pepperdine in Malibu, and then San Diego. It's probably more BYU, San Diego are right there. They've had some very strong teams recently. Pepperdine's kind of on the up and up. They have had a lot of success in the past, especially early on, not early on, but I mean, when I played back in the 90s, Pepperdine was very, very competitive. And then LMU, Loyola Marymount, and ourselves and St. Mary's have kind of been in that next group, and Pacific. Again, Pacific's a team that has a national championship. And so, yeah, the conference is really, really strong. I mean, decent number of Final Fours. Santa Clara was actually, in the Final Four back in 2004, I believe it's 4 or 5. And so the conference is very relevant nationally. I think that a lot of folks from other parts of the country don't really know the West Coast Conference. I mean, maybe a little bit through Gonzaga with men's and women's basketball, because they are also they're in our conference. And so I think that maybe we're getting a little bit more visibility now that our basketball programs are doing as well as they are. But no, it's a very strong volleyball conference and always has been.
What's that like, obviously, getting to compete against BYU?
It's awesome. It's so fun. Their crowd and their game day environment is just really fun. Volleyball matters a lot at BYU, both on the women's and the men's side. And I find that going to institutions that are that way is just such a great experience for our student athletes and just for the volleyball community as a whole, to know that there are those places, right? Nebraska is similar. I mean, even being at Illinois, volleyball mattered a lot. And there was a big group of really committed fans of the team and of the sport. And so BYU is similar in that way. It's tough with the altitude a little bit. The ball definitely flies a little bit different. We're a very tough serving team that's kind of part of our identity. And it's always tough to have to take a little bit off it, when you get up into the altitude because the ball will fly. And so that's always a little bit of a challenge. I would say their coverage of the sport is very, very strong. I always love, watching back the matches, because I feel like, their BYU TV just does a really nice job of covering the sport and being very knowledgeable about, not only the sport itself, but also the league and the teams and the national landscape. So I feel like we're going to miss them. They're leaving the conference for the Big 12 in a couple of years. So we'll definitely miss having them in the WCC, but I'm really grateful that, I've gotten to take a bunch of teams over there.
What is the game day tradition like for, obviously, your program?
Yeah. I think it's probably a better question for our athletes. I'm not sure what they do in the locker room. I think there's a lot of dancing involved prior to the game, and just kind of getting loose and connecting with one another. On our end as coaches, we're really just trying to do our best to make sure our team is as prepared as possible for the competition. And so we stay very consistent with our game day routine. for sure. As far as, getting in the gym, loosening up, getting some serve and pass in. We may have a little scout meeting just to review what, we had been working on in the week before. And then just really coming together and making sure that, we're on the same page and we're together before we get out on the court to take it to the other team. So, our team has really strong chemistry right now. I think they really value the opportunity to represent, Santa Clara and the Broncos, but at the same time, like, really want to achieve and bring the program back up to the top of the WCC. And we're really right there. I mean, we've been 4 or 5, knocking on the door outside of the COVID season, where we were really limited in how much we were able to train and then play. But we've been in really good position. Now it's just a matter of taking that next big jump up in the contention for the top of the league.
What does the recruitment process look like for those prospective student athletes looking to play college volleyball?
Yeah, it's interesting now, to be honest, especially with the transfer portal. And then right now, kind of the extra COVID year of eligibility. I think it's making it especially hard for the classes of probably 22 to 24 to really figure out what opportunities are going to be available for them. And with the NCAA rule changes over the last couple of years, we aren't able to communicate as early with the high school prospects. And I think ultimately that will be a very good thing, for the prospects. But in the first couple of years or few years of transition, I think it's been a little frustrating for a lot of the prospects, because they used to be able to call us or come on our campus even when they were freshmen and sophomore, maybe if they wanted to do a little bit of work of figuring things out early, and we could still engage with them, where now we can't, right? And so it's a little bit more of a waiting game, I think. And so I always tell, prospects when I speak on panels, and prospects and parents, to really just communicate directly with the institutions that you feel like would be the best fit, both athletically and academically for you. And that's something that has always been really important to me in all the programs I have either been leading as a head coach or even the recruiting coordinator for. It really is fit that we are all looking for. And I know for me, I'm not trying to trick anybody into coming to my institution. We really want it to be the right situation, because we know that that's what's going to lead to the best performance, both for the individuals and the team. And so just doing that research and figuring out if the person is the right fit, and that comes with a lot of, talking, getting to know them, talking to the coaches, evaluating play. And then once we can actually talk, starting June 15th before, the prospect's junior year, then we can start, really developing that relationship.
Of course, when on the road, what are some of the things that you look at in these prospective student athletes when going to camps and tournaments?
Yeah, I mean, I think all coaches really are looking, they have their own idea of who's going to fit their system, right? But I mean, general athleticism and then also skill in the sport are the pieces that really we're looking at when we're watching play, right? We're also going to see how students or how, student athletes might react, when something doesn't go their way. Right. So what is their attitude like? How are they treating their teammates? Volleyball is a very connected sport, right? And there isn't really a way for an individual to take over, even like there is in basketball, where someone can just go one-on-one and take it up the court, right? In volleyball, it's impossible. And so with that, we do really have to look for athletes to kind of understand that, whether you want to call it volleyball IQ or just recognizing team dynamics and things like that, that is an important piece. Some more positions than others, I would say. I think that's probably a little more important that your setter really understands that, or your 6th rotation outside hitter who's doing a lot of passing. maybe the middles don't need to understand it as much, but I would say that if you can get a team of folks really on the same page with that, you're going to have a lot of success. And so along with the normal, like I said, athleticism in volleyball, that's a lot about jumping and what you can touch, right? And how high you can play above the net as far as our attackers and our blockers go. Volleyball is a pretty skilled sport. It's not something that everybody just naturally knows how to do. And there are definitely some barriers, I would say, in being able to play it. You can't just kind of go out like you can with basketball and soccer and shoot around or kind of play on your own. I mean, there's some things you can do, but really the crux of the sport requires a decent amount of equipment and other people. And so I think that can limit a little bit how many folks get into playing volleyball, especially early on in their lives. But I will say, I believe we're still the fastest growing girls sport in the country and with the highest participation. And so obviously it's connecting somewhere. But I think that the development of that skill is something that we really try to evaluate, because I feel like most volleyball athletes start to acquire that between, 8th and 10th grade, right? Where we really want to see if it's actually there by the time that we're starting to talk to them junior year.
What does it happen, obviously, when the prospective student athlete comes on the official visit?
Yeah, so I think this is the case in most places. You're really trying to show the prospect what it would be like to be a student athlete at an institution, right? And so, for some places that might mean staying on campus, right, with the other students, and definitely touring campus and checking out all the facilities and things like that. You might get an opportunity to meet with a professor if or if you have a sense of what you want to study, right? You may be able to, sit in on a class or meet with a department head or a professor and really get to know what the place is about. Because we hear from a lot of prospects and a lot of student athletes that say, oh, when I stepped on that campus, like I just knew this was the place for me. Right. So some of it is just, the athlete being able to see themselves in the place. Right. And then it's about, answering those deeper questions, or maybe questions that didn't even come up until they were on campus and really were thinking about truly being there. Right. And so that's what we're really looking for out of those visits.
Of course, as a head coach, what is it like seeing those players get to put on that jersey and fall in love with the colors that you represent?
Yeah, it's really special. Playing college sports at the Division I level is really hard. And I think that gets lost. To be honest, I think that gets lost a little bit sometimes. Just the amount of work and commitment that these student athletes have to make to be at this level is really huge. And so I think that for a lot of them, that piece of choosing kind of for most of them, where they're going to finish their competitive athletics career, right? There is professional volleyball, now more in the States, which is amazing, but definitely overseas. But the large percentage, of student athletes in Division I volleyball, you hear it in the NCAA ads as well, in larger Division I sports, are not going to continue on to professional sports. And so with that, this is kind of, you would hope this is the last place they're going to put on a jersey. And so with that, I think that it's a really big deal. It's a really big deal for the athlete. It's a really big deal for their families. And so for me, I don't like to take that lightly. I think that it should be a big deal, and it is. And so it makes me feel proud. I definitely tend to be kind of quickly emotional, I'll cry in random ads all the time on TV, and my family, my children and my husband are always laughing at me, but I'm quick to, kind of feel that for other people. And so, yeah, I know I'll get teary, and so, yeah, it's special because it really does represent all the work that is going into, the achievement that these athletes have had.
Of course, what advice would you give those high school athletes looking to go into college volleyball?
I think just that, that it's hard. I mean, that piece of it, I think, matters, right? And so know why you do it. And I'm always asking our athletes that, because if you know why you're doing something and why you're putting in the work in, it makes the work easier. And because there's so much of the work, like that why really matters. And so I would say, I know a lot of, especially high school students, middle to high school, often do things because their parents are driving them to go do those things, right? And maybe they don't even remember why they do what they do, right? Or they feel like it's such a huge part of their identity because it was what they've always done, or, something that they're getting a lot of validation or encouragement to do, right? And so I would really recommend really understanding for yourself why you do it and why you love the sport, because that's going to matter a lot once it gets really hard at the next level. Once you're not the best, once you, think you can dominate and put a ball away, and then you get up against a college block and it's like impossible to put a ball away, right? And so I think that piece of it matters a lot. And then from there, I think really working on, once you know your why, working on finding the best fit for you. And so for some people, the academic piece and what program the universities offer matter a lot. For others, it doesn't, because if they don't really know what they want to pursue after, then maybe it's okay just to go to a university and figure that out, right? And so I think that doing a lot of research on the institution itself, and then also the program and how much the university and the athletic department really values volleyball. Because I think that there's some shiny stuff out there, especially in the big schools that have a lot of money or have a lot of football money, that make it seem like, oh yeah, that would be a great place to go. But for volleyball, maybe the institution doesn't care about that sport that much, right? And so really looking deeper, I would say, in, what matters to you, what's your day-to-day going to be as a volleyball player, and then how does that look at that university, right? Because I think a lot of people go on campuses and are like, oh, I'm going to go to football games, I'm going to do all this stuff. Well, we play in the fall, so probably not going to get to go to a football game. I went to maybe 3 football games my whole time in Carolina, which were awesome. One of them was a Thursday night game on ESPN, which was so fun to go to the night game. But, I think there's some pieces that people look at college and they're like, oh, I want to do that, I want to do this. And then, they don't really realize that as a D1 volleyball student athlete, you're not actually going to get to do those things. So I think looking hard at what the day-to-day is going to be, asking those questions to the coach, really making sure you understand, what the experience looks like, so that you can end up in a place where you don't feel like you need to transfer from.
What advice would you give those college volleyball players looking to go from playing college volleyball to the professional circuit, whether it's athletes unlimited, US volleyball, or even internationally?
Yeah, so there are a lot of things there. The first thing I would say is really learn to take care of your own body, and really truly understand what your physical and mental needs are to be in high performance, right? I think at the high school level and then going into the college level, a lot of times athletes look at their training as, well, this is what my coach is telling me to do, right? And there isn't as much understanding of oh no, this is what my body needs for me to perform at the highest level and to also recover and to, be the best I can be. And so I think that for a lot of pro athletes, they'll tell you, especially in the volleyball world, that you don't actually have that much support within that unless you hire and pay someone to do that for you. And so a lot of times the athletes are very much on their own to understand like what they need physically with recovery, nutrition, sleep, all the things. And so I think that piece is really important. And then as far as getting to those opportunities and those contracts and things like that, I think it's a lot about, networking. It's a lot about, performing well in big moments and big matches your junior and senior year in college, because the level of college volleyball is very strong in the US and is looked upon very positively, especially from overseas. It's looked at as very competitive. And so if you're performing at a very high level, and you look composed and you can play the whole game, I think that is a great opportunity. I think for outside hitters and pin hitters, like if you can play 6 rotations and be a really good passer, that's going to help a lot. I think that's not always in an athlete's control as far as if their coach will play them those 6 rotations, but I think getting opportunities to serve and pass as much as possible, even if you're not getting to do them in the competitive matches, I think for pin hitters is so important. I think the serving at the international level is just a whole nother level. And I think that gets missed. I think it's right at the top of our sport of Division I women's volleyball right now. But I don't think it's consistently at the level of what passers have to deal with internationally. And so I think that's a big piece, the serving and passing piece. And then it's about networking and possibly hiring an agent to represent you. I think nowadays, using the opportunity of NIL, name, image, likeness, and like getting yourself out there and branding yourself and making sure, you're someone who seems marketable. Like we are talking about professional sports, right? Like this is a industry, it's a business. And so as much as we would like to think of it as, we get to play our sport, it's far beyond that. I mean, you need to perform, you need to be marketable, frankly. And so I think taking the opportunity to use any resources that your institution provides to learn about, building your own brand and NIL is something that will help our athletes as they work to get contracts in the professional leagues moving forward.
What advice would you give future college coaches looking to get started in the industry? And what advice would you give them looking to go back to their alma mater to coach?
Yeah, as far as the industry, I would just say to make as many connections as you can with current coaches. Ask questions. I would say most of the coaches I know are more than happy to help a new up and coming coach and invite them into their gym in order to, observe kind of what happens at this level, to answer questions and things like that. I think that, working people's camps is really, really helpful for young coaches wanting to make connections, because not only will you, be able to work for a university staff, but you'll also often meet other coaches from other parts of the country who then may be able to connect you to network for open positions. If you can get a volunteer assistant position, I know it's kind of a tough pill to swallow for a lot of folks because it's not paid, but I do think it gives you the most visibility into what it takes to do the job at the next level. And so it really functions, as an apprenticeship or an internship to being able to take the next steps in the job. And so if you're able to get the opportunity to, take a position like that, I think it's important in the career. And then, once you're in an entry level kind of type assistant position, making sure you continue to make those connections and ask questions beyond just the coach you're working for, because there are a lot of different ways that people run their programs and frankly systems in volleyball and coach. And so I think the larger variety that people can find is going to help them grow individually to find out who they are as a coach. And so I think that piece is important. As far as the alma mater, I think that it just depends on where that alma mater is, frankly. And then also just staying connected, right? So staying connected to your past teammates, your past coaching staff. If you are connected to any of the administrators, who are still at the institution, just that piece of it. If coaching at your alma mater is a priority for you, I think that those are things that are important. I think that it's tough in this industry, in this career, I think, to limit yourself that much. Like if that's what you're waiting for, I think that's tough. I was very lucky. I think it's so much luck in timing, in jobs often. And so the fact that I got to, coach and support athletes, at my alma mater, I just feel so grateful because it's a very unique opportunity.
What advice would you give future head coaches looking to get started?
A lot of the similar stuff, that I just said, as far as like really talking to as many people as you can about how they operate and how they coach the sport. And so even beyond our industry, so even into corporations or other industries that have teams, right? And where you're leading people. Because I think that head coaching at its best requires a lot of self-awareness. And so if you're not asking yourself a lot of questions about how you would do things, and then frankly poking holes in those answers and critically evaluating what would be best, I think that, I'm sure there's some folks who have success, but I'm not sure how long your career would last. I think head coaching requires a lot of, like I said, self-awareness and also just critical evaluation of, how you operate day to day, week to week, year to year. And I think that can be exhausting and a bit emotionally draining at times, but I do believe that it's necessary as we, serve our athletes.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you on social media along with the Santa Clara volleyball program at?
Yeah, so I am at Coach E. Lindsey on Twitter, Erin K. Lindsey on Instagram, and then all of our handles for Santa Clara volleyball are SCU volleyball. And you can also find our beach program at Bronco Beach on Insta. We're a pretty good follow on social, so we'd love to see you all. And hope to maybe see you at a match as well. We are traveling out east to Georgia for first weekend of play next fall for any East Coast listeners. But otherwise, yeah, we're mostly out here on the West.
Thank you again, Coach Erin Lindsey, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with the Santa Clara volleyball program.
Thank you.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon. And you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Erin Lindsey, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thanks.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.